I got my dream job. I have 2 young sons, wonderful wife, Lauren. I moved down to Richmond, Virginia. And in a couple of months, I am like a panic attack stricken insomniac, struggling with needing to either drink alcohol or take sleeping pills just to fall asleep.
I mean, there may be someone listening that's going, I can barely see through the trees today.
It seemed like that my head knew all the right answers.
Yeah.
And yet my body was rebelling.
What do you say to someone that's listening that's saying, I am just not good at keeping habits?
Realize in that season that your head can go one way, your habits go the other, your heart's going to follow the habits, and there's a lot to unpack there.
Life is wild. Faith, marriage, parenting, work, all of it. One minute you're inspired, the next you're in chaos. That's why I started No Longer Nomads, the podcast that throws you into the deep end of real stories and authentic truth. We're talking ex-witches who found freedom, former Muslims who met Jesus, mountaineers who even survived the wilderness for 6 days, and much, much more. No Longer Nomads, because no one was meant to wander alone. New episodes drop every Tuesday at 5 a.m. What if your spiritual life is breaking down because your body is? What if the habits you thought were harmless, like skipping sleep, eating junk, living on stress, are actually wrecking your soul? Could anxiety and disconnection be less about not praying enough and more about ignoring the way God designed us, body and spirit? Justin Whitmel Earley says yes. In his new book, The Body Teaches the Soul, he opens up about a crash that nearly undid him and how rediscovering the link between physical rhythms and spiritual health changed everything. If you've ever wondered why your faith feels stuck, why your mind is restless, or why peace seems out of reach, you cannot miss this conversation. All right, guys, welcome back to this episode of No Longer Nomads. We are so pumped you're here. If you want to help us grow, make sure to give us a 5-star review on Apple or on Spotify. You can actually watch the video on Spotify or YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. I think it said that 90% of our listeners are not subscribers. So it would help us out a ton if you hit that subscribe button. And if you want to know more about No Longer Nomads and what's going on, definitely go to our website at nolongernomads.co, and you can sign up for the newsletter. That'll give you insight on merch. We've got merch out, this hat and some shirts, and I'm always big and nerdy into design, so we'll be making some cool stuff for merch and hats. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and enjoy this episode. Well, Justin, welcome to the show, man. Welcome back. I'm glad to have you on the show again.
I'm honored that you felt it was okay for me to come back.
Well, when you were like, hey, I've got a new book I'm working on. Actually, I think you mentioned on the last episode we did with each other.
I might have,
and you started just working on it, but there it is behind you. I'm stoked.
Bam.
Show everyone what you got. If you guys are on YouTube here, you can see the video. The Body Teaches the Soul. And just like all your other covers, man, I love all the artwork and super pumped to jump into this one. But man, tell the listeners a little bit about you and what you're up to.
Yeah, I'm a father of 4 boys here in Richmond, Virginia. I'm a business lawyer. That's what I do for most of my day, sitting here at my desk right now talking to you. So also a writer and speaker, a lot on habits. And this is sort of like my bivocational thing. I weave these together. I either write contracts or write books or negotiate contracts or give talks. So writing and speaking is sort of my thing in both areas. But I'm for reasons we'll discuss more in depth, have become super, super interested in embodiment, physicality, and all that means for our spiritual life, whether it's like eating and exercising or meditating and mental health stuff. I've just been on a journey the past couple of years of reading and trying to explore why God made us with bodies. And so I'm so excited about this new book project. I honestly was telling somebody this morning, like, I don't think I've ever been excited about a book the way I am about this one.
That's awesome.
Which,
what makes you so excited
that's true
about
for everybody else too.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I've read it and it's phenomenal. And I'm not just saying that because you're in front of me. Like, it's a great book. And I told you, I'm pumped for my wife to read it. I'm pumped to send it to people. So it really is a good one. But what makes you excited about this one more than, maybe not more than others, but what makes you, pumped for this one?
I think because it was such a helpful journey to me. So my short story is, and anybody who is on our last episode will remember some of this. I'll just give the high level overview. My like past 2 decades have been, I'm just now 40, right? So I graduated from the University of Virginia. I was an English literature major, like wanted to write and think. I went to be a missionary in China, had some amazing years being a missionary in China. And then I felt called to be a lawyer, which was a big term, but I got really excited about that and moved back to the States and went to law school. And right at the age of 30, I have like 2 boys, married to my wife, Lauren. Law school went well. I got a brand new, great job. And my life fell apart into a awful mental health collapse, because all the while that my head was in this place of calling and being a missionary and learning about the law, like I was living a very heady life, which great worldview, Yeah. But my habits were like sprinting the opposite direction into addiction to technology. I just got my first iPhone when I moved back to the States. I was in the law school rhythms of always adding more to my schedule, staying up later, waking up earlier, not paying attention to my body at all. I mean, eating as an afterthought, not exercising. Yeah. And I realized in that season that, your head can go one way, your habits go the other, your heart's going to follow the habits. And there's a lot to unpack there. But what I mean is that your habits affect who you are mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And all these ordinary moments in our lives are actually extraordinary levers in who we are spiritually and physically. And so that was like my intro to writing. And anybody who's read any of my other books will recognize this theme. I'm always writing about habits and formation. But Josh, like I had thought about it in spiritual disciplines, and then I thought about it in family rhythms with habits of the household. Yeah. Thought about it in friendship rhythms with my book Made for People. And if you're looking on YouTube, you can see like them lining up here. Yep. And the idea, if you think about it like in concentric circles, like I got started writing thinking about why habits form you spiritually, and then started to think, how they form your family, like your household unit, and then how they form your community. And so I'm like going these outward concentric circles. And a couple of years ago, I just started to like rethink the original question in a new lens. And I was like, why is it all so physical? Because I thought we were talking about spiritual change here. And I, like, why does fasting matter so much? Like, why does literally just not eating shape you spiritually so much? Yeah. And why do I feel like so much more equipped to love my kids when I'm eating well and exercising? Like, the fruits of the Spirit seem so much more, fruitful when I'm taking care of my body. And like, these things seemed unspiritual to me at first. I was like, I must be going in the wrong direction, because I think it just works, top down. Like, if we accept the truth of the gospel, then it like comes out into the rest of our life. And I was sort of uncomfortable, like from a biblical perspective, of whether things were also working bottom up, that attention to our physical life could have fruit in our spiritual life, and vice versa. Yeah. And so, I could just keep going and talking, right? But I'll pause there and say, the reason I think I'm so excited about this is because the couple years of researching and then writing and then editing and working through and honestly practicing, Josh, like practicing this book and like doing what I was writing about, exercising and sleeping and eating and thinking differently about my mental health, just changed my life so much. It just was so helpful to me. And so I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, hey, everybody, the Lord has done something in my life. I want to tell you about it. Yeah. Because it changed me so much. And I'm just really eager to offer it to people.
Well, dude, I think your work is, like you said, the different spheres you've gone into with family. You've helped so many families out with habits of the household that, there's so many practical things you've done that are made for people. That's one that you and I talked about. Yeah. It's so good for men, for community. And that was a book that I like ate up. And for this one, I'm just pumped as well, because there is so much that I'd love to talk about in this episode, but how connected the body and soul are. And so the title of the book, you guys, is called The Body Teaches the Soul, 10 Essential Habits to Form a Healthy and Holy Life. I'll go through the 10. We don't have to go through all of these, of course.
No, I think it's helpful. But read them.
But here are the 10.
I would want to tell you.
Yeah. Breathing, thinking, eating and drinking, sleeping, sickness and pain, exercise, sex, technology, worship, and the last one is death and resurrection. So We don't have to, of course, hit all 10 of those. You guys got to read that book and,
how much time
find
do
them
you
out
have?
yourself. Yeah, how much time you got? But I'd love to start back with like kind of the genesis of really a lot of your work was you were in your 30s, I think you said, and you kind of you had 2 kids at the time, and that's when your life was starting to implode and had a bit of a crisis. I don't want to say that lightly, but I'd love for you to just share about maybe what's going on and then how you kind of started to piece your life back together through some of this stuff. So.
Well, specifically what was going on is I just started in my lawyering job. I should be on top of the world. I just graduated, law school, really high in my class. Like I did really well. I got my dream job. I have 2 young sons, wonderful wife, Lauren. I moved down to Richmond, Virginia, where it feels like the rest of my life should be starting. And in a couple of months, I am like a panic attack stricken insomniac, struggling with needing to either drink alcohol or take sleeping pills just to fall asleep. I'm starting to experience suicidal thoughts for the first time in my life. And I am so, Josh, just confused. I'm so confused because it seemed like that my head knew all the right answers.
Yeah.
And yet my body was rebelling. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like I knew that my identity shouldn't be in work. And yet there was a visceral sense in me that I was worried about whether I would keep my job or make people at the office happy. And I'm like, why aren't these two connecting? Like, why the gut feeling if my head knows the right answer? I knew the gospel of peace. Like I don't think in all my struggles, I ever really thought there was a better answer than God to everything. And that he really was bringing everything together for my good. And yet my body was terrified. And I was just experiencing this gap constantly and really intensely. Now, this is super normal for so many people. I mean, it is so normal to talk about a gospel of joy and yet be stuck in depression. It is so normal to talk about a gospel of peace and yet be wrestling with anxiety. It's so normal to talk about a gospel of freedom and yet be shackled in our addictions. And this question just began to open up for me. Like, well, how is it that we can have heads over here and habits over there? Like, how is it that our heart, is following these habits? And so this was the beginning of my wrestling with why there was more to the Christian life and indeed the human life than just thinking. Like, why did other things seem to matter so much? And this is where it started for me.
Okay. What was home life like? Were you experiencing a lot of emotions? Was, parenting, marriage, like, were you in a good space there? Or was it mainly internal for you at this point?
I think I was in a good space there. I think, my kids were really young, like 2 and 2 months at that time, my first 2 boys. My marriage was going well. And this was the odd thing about this whole time, Josh. Everything on the outside was going well. I think what was not going well is that I was totally overwhelmed by my schedule. I mean, I was pushing my body. I was always staying up too late. I was always waking up too early. I was definitely trying to do too much. Constantly on the move. Wasn't eating, consistently or healthily. I wasn't, I don't struggle with like drunkenness or being alcoholic in any sense, but I wasn't attentive to, like that having a drink right before sleep every night just to make myself fall asleep was not going to be healthy for me. So there was a reality that, life was busy. I mean, I had two young children and a new job.
For sure.
But like that seemed to me to be the only problem, and that didn't seem enough to cause what was happening in me. I think because I didn't realize that how much the body does teach the soul, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't know that at the time. But everything else seemed fine, and yet internally I'm falling apart.
Man. So then let's get into, we can fast forward a bit. What happened in your life where you started to kind of put some pieces together? Was it habits that you started that really started to change you internally? And then I'd love to, transition to the book a bit, because I know this kind of flows into that. But I'd love to hear kind of how, and the reason I asked, Justin, is just because, there might be someone listening going, each day to me is so hard.
Yeah.
with kids or without kids. I mean, there may be someone listening that's going, I can barely see through the trees today. And so
Yes.
this might be a message for them of hope for them. How did you personally in this season start to just build things back to where you go, okay, I'm feeling like I'm much better mentally?
I was definitely there. I mean, this is why I think suicidal thoughts were happening, because it was like every day I can't see through the trees. I mean, this is all there is. A huge change in my life happened about a year into this struggle. I sat down with two of my best friends named Steve and Matt, and it was right around the new year, classic time that you're thinking about like new habits and new rhythms. And I asked them if they would keep me accountable to this new set of practices. And I got there because I had tried medication. And while I completely support that in some instances, it wasn't moving the needle for me. I tried counseling, also completely support that. In many instances, it wasn't moving the needle for me though. And so my wife and I had sort of had this idea, like, what if we put some guardrails around your life, some like limiting rhythms just to like rein in your chaos, almost literally as a schedule matter, by the way. So I'm sitting there around the new year asking them to keep me accountable to these rhythms, just because I'm trying to be a good boy and do anything that will help, but not thinking that, oh, this is going to fundamentally change my life. My life began to completely change. I remember it, so well. Like in the 2 to 3 months after that new year, I remember like January went by and I was like, man, I feel a little bit better. And then February, I was like, I'm feeling fundamentally different. And then in March, I was like, I think I can imagine getting out of this stage. Now it would be years before I felt like truly recovered from this.
Yeah.
But I noticed right away that when I paid attention to these ordinary habits, something extraordinary was starting to happen in my life. And this was like a flashpoint in my life of like, wait, why? And so what was I doing? They were things that I've written about like ever since, like scripture before phone. Trying to replace that morning anxious routine of scrolling news or work emails with some meditation and quiet. Fasting started to happen in my life regularly, not every week and not necessarily even every month, but periodically. At that time, I actually was doing it once a week. I started to actually Sabbath and rest. Along with that, it's hard to Sabbath well without starting to sleep well. This is why one of the chapters in the book is about sleeping and Sabbath. They go together for me.
Yeah.
But I started to, by nature of struggling with insomnia, pay a lot more attention to my actually sleep rhythms and try to protect and care for sleep. And I could go on. There was a lot of things because I was a man in crisis. I always caution people, most people change one thing at a time, not 20 things at a time. There's probably, making up a statistic, 10% of us that changed like this, where suddenly we're like, everything has to change. That was me. Most people aren't like that. But all these little things started to aggregate to a really big thing. And that was, I started to feel like I was walking with Jesus again intimately for the first time in a long time. As a corporate lawyer, not as a missionary anymore. Like in my everyday grind of my job, like I was actually starting to feel his presence in a real, tangible way.
Yeah.
And two, my mental health was starting to like show signs of coming back. And the decade since, Josh, honestly has been about me alongside the Lord exploring and writing and hopefully offering help to other people of why that's true. Like why do habits lead the heart spiritually? And then this most recent book of why do physical habits, like literally habits of sleep and exercise and breathing and patterns of mental health, like why do they matter so much to our spiritual life? Because I feel like this is my second testimony, and the Lord changed so much of my life in the wake of those little habits that I've been, one, using them ever since to walk with Jesus, and two, trying to share what he's done in my life.
What do you say to someone that's listening that's saying, I am just not good at keeping habits? How can I do this? I want this. I'll start something and a week later I'm off the wagon again.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get this question a lot, but what would you say?
This is fun because I can, with a cheerful smile on my face, say, yes, you are actually. You are really good at keeping habits. Everyone is. That everybody's life is made up of, at least studies show, about 40% of your daily actions are not conscious choices, they're unconscious habits. So we all work by habit.
Yeah.
I mean, what somebody's saying, of course, is like, well, I'm not good at changing them. I'm not good at like doing the good ones. And that's just a struggle that's common to everybody. Like if you look at my life, the guy writing a book called, 10 Essential Habits to Form a Healthy and Holy Life, like I'm not a paragon of like discipleship and physical health. Like all my friends know my errors, my anger, my excesses, my addictions.
Yeah.
Like I'm as messy as you are, and we all are. Okay.
Yeah.
I write about this stuff because I need it so badly, not because I'm so good at it.
Yeah.
So I know these things are hard to work through. Now, as honestly as I mean all that, I will also honestly say my life is way different than it was 10 years ago. I mean, way different. Like the Lord has really changed how I live my life every day. And he's so to that person, I would say, if you think that you are stuck with the habits, addictions, patterns, rhythms, mental health ruts that you have today, and that you really can't change them, like this is just who you are, I would say you are convinced of a lie from the enemy. Like that is just not spiritually true about you. It is not biologically true about you. The great news of the gospel that is, by the way, inscribed into our bodies is that we can change, that grace is real. And that means, one, spiritual renewal. Like God has actually set us free from the chains of sin and death. This is a miracle. Number two, that spiritual miracle has equivalent physical ramifications. Neuroplasticity is built into your brain. I call this grace in the system. Like you can change. So I would just say to that person, you don't let the enemy define what you think about your body and brain. You can change just as much as the next person, actually. You are fallen just as much as the next person. We all wrestle with both physical, brokenness in our body and spiritual brokenness. But if my life stands for anything, I'm like, it's a testimony now of, oh my gosh, I thought I was stuck. I thought it was a one-way track to mental unraveling. And the Lord has done such a great work in my life. And I just want to proclaim it and say this absolutely can be true of you, not because it's just true of me, but because that's what Jesus does. That's who he is.
Well, man, let's get into the book a bit. I really liked the breathing chapter. I think it'd be fun to talk through that a bit.
Yeah.
Mainly because, like, man, over the last even 4 or 5 months, we, Jesse and I, my wife and I, we've got 3 boys. It's wild. It's fun. But at times when it gets way too chaotic, I mean, our emotions can be high, hers, mine, and the kids are so good at getting in there and pushing your buttons. And
oh, man, experts.
They're experts. And then to make it harder, we thought, well, we've been in a decent, this was, 6 months ago. We've been in a decent phase. Let's get a puppy. Let's throw a dog into the mix. So we are so dumb and got a puppy. And the other day, about a few weeks ago, we're like, okay, we gotta get rid of Fern, our dog. We love her. She's a great dog. She's gonna be a great dog, but just too much with the kids. We still have Fern, and we love Fern, and we think we're gonna make it through. She's calming down and all that. But my point is it's chaos. And we love it, but at times it's too much, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's been many different forms of tools I've had to learn. And I think you started off one of the chapters with like, it's a quote that's like, instead of asking for less problems, look for more skills or more tools, wish for more skills and tools. I love that quote. And part of that I think is really implementing breathing, right? Instead of me reacting emotionally to my kids, I can now take a quick moment to breathe, calm down. And if I would have reacted before I took that deep breath, it would have come out as anger, frustration,
That's right.
Shaming, whatever you want to call it. But just even taking a breath is good. But it helps me. But to take that a step further, I love the box breathing. I love other exercise, other breathing exercises, deep breathing. Can you share a little bit about that, why you decided to put that book in the book, and maybe why that's helped you out?
Yes, definitely. Let me start with my skepticism, because when I was wrestling with anxiety, people would give breath tips like, use these breathing patterns. And I would be like, y'all, like, this is a water gun, like a squirt gun at the gates of hell. Like like breathing is not going to change like
Right.
what is going on inside me. Okay. So I just thought like way too small to matter. And honestly, I ignored it for years, even in my struggle of mental health. And then as I started thinking about this book, so this is years later, breath came like front and center to what we are as a body and as a soul. And so this goes, the reason I love starting with breathing and the book starts with it is because physically and spiritually, like the Bible starts with this, and actually mental health and physical health does start with this. So what do I mean by that? One, Genesis 2, when we look at the creation of Adam, God takes dust, Hebrew word for afar, just like organic matter, breathes the spirit of life into it, like breath. Okay, so breath, God's spirit of life, meets dust, organic matter of the world. And Genesis 2:7 says a living soul was born. So the first use of the word soul in the Bible is a word to describe the unity of body and breath. And this is a wild spiritual and physical statement. One, physically, this is actually ancient and modern knowledge. We know that life is life because it's animated by breath. Like when breath leaves the body, we call that death. It's all like no matter what you die of, your medical cause of death is always lack of oxygen to the brain. Like
Right.
That's what causes you to actually die. So the ancients knew what we know, and that is that breath is essential to life. And I did so much fascinating reading that really changed my opinion on breathing. Like I didn't realize though, actually your heart rate is directly related to how you breathe. Like you want to speed it up, then go do that for 60 seconds. Like like actually my heart rate just increased just doing that. If you want to slow it down, take a huge breath and then exhale like super slowly over 20 seconds. This is why any actually good counselor will teach you box breathing. Box breathing is the simple idea of taking a box. You literally, if you're watching the video, you can watch me trace it. You breathe in for like 4 seconds, hold that breath for 4 seconds, breathe out slowly for 4 seconds, hold that for 4 seconds. And a pattern of doing that will...
I did that this morning, by the way.
Dude, I never...
Amazing.
Like, it's like getting into a nice warm shower and just sort of sitting like and calming you down, or like sitting down in a comfortable place. I could wax on and off about this, but here's the idea.
Yeah.
Breath is the only vital life system in your body that you have the power to consciously take control of or let go unconscious. Like you can't do this with digestion, with your heartbeat. You can't do this with any other vital life system. But scientists say this is the brain's like emergency escape hatch. When your body is going haywire, your brain can take control and breathe to bring it back to regulation. So it's physically so important. And that, let's go back to the spiritual, makes so much sense of our spiritual life. The Hebrew word for soul in that verse I just quoted, Genesis 2:7, is a word called nephesh. And it actually literally means your neck. So the Hebrews, when they said, you're a living soul, or if they said, if somebody would ask you, hey, point to your soul, we would be like, it's like, I don't know, it's like an ether that I am, or maybe it's like the center of my brain, or maybe it's my heart, I don't know. Hebrews would have done this, like, oh, right here. You know why?
Interesting.
It's where your body meets air, your throat, your neck. It's like literally where the physical meets the spiritual. And so if this shows anything, it shows the biblical unity of how God made us. And I'll stop my waxing on breath right here, because the idea is that if you take Genesis 2:7 and say, actually, we're only bodies, we're just dust. This is the materialist error that we make a lot in our modern life. Like, I'm just brain chemicals. I just need a pill. I'm just stuck with this like body I have. That's the lie we were talking about earlier. That is, you are doing harm to what God made because you're denying your spiritual side. But vice versa, and a lot of Christians are tempted towards this, a lot of spiritual people are tempted towards this, that no, my body just gets in the way. Like ultimately, this is a Gnostic way of thinking, like ultimate life is really just spiritual life. It's just this, idea of spiritual reality. Well, either way you cut that, you can idolize the body or you can ignore the body. Both of those are going to be separating body and spirit. And like literally when that happens, we call that death. That's what happens when you die. Like your body is separated from your spirit.
Yeah.
And I just want to say philosophically, that is true. So when you separate your physical life from your spiritual life, you're entering into a theology of death, because God made you a unified whole, body and spirit. We call that a soul. And so with breathing, as with everything else we're going to talk about in this book, you are entering a spiritual world through the physical and vice versa. It's all like you're never going to be just doing one or the other. And so the whole project of the book is to show how all these areas we just thought were physical, breathing, is actually extraordinarily spiritual, breath prayers. And you can take that and say, oh, here's a new spiritual practice that Josh honestly has changed my life. And that's breath prayers. Like doing that box breathing I talked about earlier in the form of a prayer, like breathe in, the Lord is my shepherd, hold. Breathe out, I shall not want. I do these all the time now, every day. And it's just been such a rich part of my new spiritual, physical life.
So let's go back to the title of the book and how this connects. The body teaches the soul. How do you come up with this idea? And I'd love to hear, is it more of in your mind, the body can shape the soul, or is it vice versa? The soul, like habits can shape the soul. I'd love to hear a little about kind of just this broader idea, and then we can get into some of the other 10 essentials. So,
yeah, there's two things going on in the title. One, I wanted to emphasize a bottom-up route of spirituality, because we're very familiar, usually at least, most people I meet are familiar with the top-down route of spirituality, which, by the way, is equally true and equally important. And that is that spiritual truth, or thinking, meditating, changes who you are physically, completely, everything. And any counselor, Christian or not, will tell you this. If you are convinced of lies, I'm not worthy, my mom hates me, no one likes me, oh my gosh, will your body suffer? Like lies, I'm alone in the world, God isn't real, I'm worthless. Your body will respond with things that we call anxiety, depression, panic, even heart attacks. Like, we know top down matters, and I hope nobody doubts that. We are usually much more skeptical that bottom up, the way I feel and steward my body, can actually help me believe something more fully. As in, acting like a man in love with your wife can help you become a man in love with your wife. Actually, guys should be very familiar with this truth. Having sex increases your emotion. Going through the body changes what you think and how you feel. But in spiritual life, I think we're really skeptical of it sometimes. So the idea that the body teaches the soul is the idea running throughout the whole book, that we can learn bottom up. I mentioned a second thing, and that's just really brief. I'm trying to play on this idea that the body keeps the score. I mean, a lot of people in the past 10 years have read and been introduced to the radical importance of physicality in mental health through Vander Kolk's work, The Body Keeps the Score. And I don't think he's a perfect thinker. I don't think he has all the answers. I think his book is generally great, but I am literally trying to play on, here's a spiritual primer for the things that Body Keeps the Score has gotten America interested in. I wanted to write a sort of not a Christian version of it by any means, because I'm not a psychiatrist like him, but I wanted to write a Christian spiritual primer on why physicality is so important to your spirituality.
Man, there's so many on my list here I want to get to. Let's jump over to eating and drinking, fast or feast. I think that there's a lot there for sure, but let's jump into that one.
Yeah, this has been so rich for me. I've never struggled with anything like an eating disorder or any sort of like real addiction, but my whole life has been characterized by excess. Like, it's so easy for me to try to eat myself out of my unhappiness or stress.
Sure.
This was super common for me in my anxious years. Now, so I have, and this is so important to note up front, okay, many of our metabolism can hide our sins. And our metabolism can hide our virtues. So I just really quick, as we go into eating, like, I'm not necessarily yet talking about what your body looks like.
Right.
I'm talking about what your soul looks like, or rather what you desire, what you feel. There's been so much of my life that's been characterized by excess because I wanted to feel good again.
Right.
And This has wrecked my parenting in so many places. This has wrecked my work productivity in so many places, as in like, I'll go like and binge eat like, a huge burger and fries for dinner. And then, sleep poorly, feel super exhausted, snap at my kids in the morning. And because eating creates these cycles of bad desire. And likewise, this happens at the office. Like I'll eat because I'm stressed and then I can't concentrate in the afternoon. And this, this is drinking for people too. So I just want to start by saying like, I struggle with this massively. A lot of this chapter in the book came from thinking through the Genesis paradigm for food, which is God introduces food into the garden. He says, look, here's fruit that's good for food and pleasing to the eye, which is actually really fascinating. Right at the beginning of creation, God points out that this food is necessary for you to eat. Like you need to consume creation in order to live. But it's also beautiful. It's something we enjoy. And so on these two ends of this spectrum, we have one, we're meant to delight in food. And that's actually really important. Like God intends us to delight in it. And two, we're meant to depend on it. Those two poles run throughout everything I want to say about eating. Because if we're meant to depend on food and delight in it, that explains why we struggle so much with greed and shame. Like, because we take food and after the fall, we say, I don't want to be dependent. I'm just going to get as much as I can. And we're greedy. And then immediately after that, we feel so horrible about our willpower. We're horrible about our body image and we feel shame. Like the enemy takes dependence and delight, the gifts of food, and twists them to greed and shame, which makes then so much sense of why the Bible, if you think about eating in the Bible, there's these rhythms constantly of fasting and feasting. Which is like fasting is the idea that we recover our dependence on food. We recover the idea that, if I don't eat, even for an hour, but much more for a day, I suddenly get so needy. And that shows us our dependence on God and food. Like we engage dependence again. And then on the other hand, you have this rich biblical tradition of feasting, and that is literally just blowing the top off and enjoying creation, eating and drinking. Jesus turning water into wine. Jesus making food for his disciples on the beach after he rises again, like eating with tax collectors and sinners. Jesus' life is characterized by fasting and by feasting. And that feasting idea is just that actually, like God didn't make us to be deprived. He didn't make us to be hungry. He made us to be full and full of delight. And so wherever you are with eating, it's very confusing for most people. Practicing these rhythms of fasting and feasting is a wonderful way to start to recover what God made you for when he made your body to need food.
Practical tip here. When fasting, would love to hear if there's some things that you do that work for you and your family. For a listener that's going, man, I've always wanted to do that. Like I've got some buddies that have done, like much longer month-long fasts. My mom, she's someone tremendous that's always fasting. There's something like heavy going on in the family. She'll fast for the day. She won't like broadcast it to the family. I'm fasting, but she's always fasting through things.
That's so awesome.
Or she'll just do, hey, this week I'm fasting from sugar entirely because this is something heavy going on in my family, whatever. So, different things work for different people, but what has worked for you? If someone's saying, hey, I want to get into this, I haven't really tried this route yet. Any advice you'd give to them?
Yeah. I strongly recommend trying a 24-hour fast. This is my favorite version. And I've got a lot of ideas for smaller or bigger versions in the book, but my favorite version is a waking to sleeping fast. It's as simple as it sounds. When you wake up, you don't eat. And when you go to bed hungry. So you basically experience one day of not being able to go to food to comfort yourself. And I have so many realizations every time I do this. One, how much of my life is spent literally time-wise trying to get and then around food. One of the beautiful things about fasting is it opens up time for prayer. So I'll usually replace breakfast with some, like get up and actually have some time in the Word. Make sure I'm up a little before the kids on a fasting day and have spent some time in the Word. At lunch, I will take a prayer walk around my office block instead of eating. And then I'll usually actually sit down for dinner with Lauren and the kids, which is an incredible experience in and of itself to like be sitting down with no plate in front of you while everyone else eats.
Yeah.
It's a remarkable way to like bend your evening towards service and discipline.
Well, and such a great example for your family too.
Well, actually there is that.
Yeah.
Internally, the work that's happening as I watch other people enjoy food and I'm just there to help them and not enjoying it myself is a remarkable, like, again, body teaches the soul, like, oh, wow, I'm internalizing what it feels like to serve. But then, they ask, like, oh, why are you fasting? And, we obviously we want to take Jesus' words seriously about not trying to impress the world by our fasting. That doesn't mean you don't ask friends to pray for you while you're fasting. That doesn't mean you don't tell your family what's going on. There's, you want them praying for you, and you obviously want to be teaching your children. And then, anyway, real quick, I usually spend the evening after the kids go to bed taking a long prayer walk around the neighborhood. And so that's like a short picture of what it usually looks like for me. And I'll just say, even if you just do this for a meal, or even if you just do this from social media or sugar, because maybe your body's not in the place where you can do a whole day fast, God is so faithful to use these times to reset that dependence and delight to say, like, child, like you don't exist by yourself. Like you need me. You need creation to live. This is why you feel the way you feel. So embrace that. And by the way, then fasting sends us back to the delight that it is to be nourished by God and to be nourished by food. And if we had all the time in the world, I would go into what the chapter in the book goes into about why this actually also resets your dopamine cycles and helps break your food cycles of addictions. I think fasting is actually...
If you want to share a little bit, if you want to, but it's up to you.
I can just get really deep into this, but I do think so one of the things that happens when we eat, particularly in America where so much of our food is processed and highly salted and highly sugared, is that our body has huge dopamine spikes in response to what we eat. And the brain's natural reaction to dopamine spikes is to balance it out. You'll see a diagram in the book of a seesaw. And this is well documented. A great book on this is called Dopamine Nation. And the Stanford professor, she explains why our brain is really focused on homeostasis. So when our dopamine spikes really high, homeostasis is the idea of balance. The brain will actually send pain signals throughout the body, discomfort, to balance that back down. And it's the brain's way of saying, go get that thing again. So like you can imagine like in nature, this is really good for us. If we eat something that's like a fruit, wonderful and rich in sugar and energy, once the sugar, leaves us, the brain will stomp on the pain side and be like, go get that again. So in nature, and I call this with quote unquote God-made foods, this is a natural balance that is really good for us. With highly processed quote unquote man-made foods, this starts to explain why we feel the way we feel after we binge a whole bag of potato chips or binge a whole sleeve of Oreos or drink too much. Our brain is starting to go haywire in dopamine spikes, and then the brain's creating pain to say go back again, and we're flip-flopping back and forth between, again, greed and shame. That's why like we were meant for dependence and delight, but these eating rhythms of America are actually physically making us dopamine spike into greed and then dopamine withdraw into shame. And so we viscerally feel this rhythm happening. And when we fast, it's actually a proven way to reset your dopamine levels. So it's a great way to bring that life of excess back into balance. And then, of course, Jesus says clearly, you're not meant for fasting. You're meant for feasting because, he's like, I don't fast. He tells his disciples, you don't fast when the bridegroom's here. When Jesus is with us, we celebrate. Now, there's a metaphor for this at the end of creation, like the wedding feast of the Lamb. But in the ordinary moments of life, it's great for us to indulge with friends and with community and celebrating anything from a promotion to a birthday to, one of our children coming to faith or a baptism or, and everything in between, small and big. When you balance your life of like, oh, we do feast, but we also fast. And in between, we hold to what I call ordinary fare. That's just a pattern of regular disciplined eating in the middle so that we don't spike our dopamine and become really wild. That sort of rich life, I call it spiritual rhythms for eating, where you're encountering dependence, you're encountering delight, and then you're caring for your dopamine levels in your brain in between. That's been for me, so much more effective than any diet, just to think about these spiritual rhythms for eating,
Yeah.
because I'm not thinking about my body image and what do I weigh and how much muscle mass do I have. I mean, I exercise a lot. I like to think about that stuff, but primarily spiritual rhythms for eating make me think about how I love. Like, am I loving God? Am I loving neighbor? And is the way that I'm eating conducive to loving?
So good. I'm glad you shared more on that, man. Let's jump to one more. Let's jump to thinking. So I have thinking here, garden your mind. And I think that's such a good, as we're talking anxiety, we're talking to that listener that we were just, talking to a few minutes ago about maybe what they're going through, some anxiety, some, heavy waters of life. We talked a bit about breathing. I think thinking is so important as well. I would love for you to just share a little bit about that, and then where we can point people to find the book.
Yeah. Gardening the mind is a metaphor that is really carefully chosen, because at the worst of my anxiety crash, I remember I had a moment of horrible panic. I can still remember I was sitting in my law firm looking out the window from the 18th floor over the beautiful James River in Richmond. And I remember thinking, I got a wife, I got 2 kids, I got this great job. Look at this river view. It's a beautiful day. Outside, everything should be wonderful. And yet inside, I was still like on the fire of a panic attack. And I didn't sleep the night before. I was like struggling with insomnia. And I remember, I think it was a flash of thought from the enemy was, maybe I'm just stuck in this like broken brain forever. And actually, maybe all that reality out there is just like my brain's projected image, and what actually is happening is what's inside my head. And, I could go on, but it was this horrible thought. Many people with mental health issues have it. Boiled down to a nutshell, I'm stuck inside my brain. Like, this is all the reality there is, these brain chemicals. And as it turns out, I guess I got a broken one. I didn't win the dopamine lottery. I got a bad one that struggles with anxiety or depression. I'm stuck with it. And you can literally, you might be feeling this as you're listening. You literally feel the world start to close, and it's like concentric circles just coming on. And like it's dark to say, but it is important to note, this is why so many people with mental health issues shoot themselves in the head, because they can't figure out how to stop what is happening in their head. Dang. And this is as dark as it sounds. Yeah. This is the error the enemy wants you to believe, that you are just your brain and you can't do anything about it. God does not see you like that. God sees you as a body and a spirit, which means you are changeable by what you do physically, because you're a body, and you are changeable by what you do spiritually. But the important thing there is that you're changeable. You're changeable. You're not stuck. And we don't really know what this means. And then if you think about, here's what it means. It's the original vocation of Eden. Like, Adam and Eve are in a garden, and God calls them to work it towards Shalom, like to connect all the complicated things in it and weave it into a flourishing garden. And if you start to think about your brain as a garden, that you're a gardener as in any good farmer knows you're not totally autonomous, right? Like you can work and do all your job and stuff, but tough soil changes things. Droughts and blights and weather changes things. Like, you're working in cooperation with God and the land, right? And anybody with a mental health struggle needs to know you're working in cooperation with things you can't control, with a body you didn't, that is broken in certain ways, and with things that can come from the outside and hurt you, whether it's like literally brain trauma and injuries or, a divorce or a death in the family. These things happen. And yet any farmer knows that if they don't do anything, then it'll be a desert, or a jungle. But if you work faithfully and persistently, you can cultivate any land into a flourishing garden. And that is the truth of our brains, that it's the original Edenic vocation to say, garden your mind towards Shalom. And I take that in the book and look at the different dimensions of the brain, like up and down, left and right, inner and outer, storied, past and future. And you could talk about a lot of these dimensions and just say, you, like a complicated ecosystem, have a lot of dimensions that need to be attended to: relationships, physical activity, creativity, and logic, right, left brain. And when you think like a gardener and say, I'm going to weave Shalom into this thing, you are doing one of the best things that you can do for your body and soul. And that is being attentive to your mental health. And the great news of life, as we said before, is that God built grace into the system. In terms of neuroplasticity, you can change. And the best way to do that is to basically look at this book as a whole and say, I'm going to turn it into a rule of life. Like, I'm going to adopt patterns of breathing, of thinking, of exercising, of sleeping, and as a way to garden the mental and physical health of my mind and body. And this has helped me just so much, like have agency in my life and my mind.
I was talking to a buddy of mine who is from Israel, and so I said, "What does Shalom mean to you?" And so, because I was, looking at I was reading your book, and you unpack that in there, and he has a much more in-depth conversation, and that I'd have to play that. I'd probably butcher it if I try to rehash it here. But essentially, he boiled it down to this: is that word Shalom is so special and important to them. Because it boils down to total peace, not just peace, but total peace and completeness. He says it boils down to completeness. And so I thought that was really interesting. What a beautiful word that they use to greet, to say goodbye. So man, thank you so much for your work. Let's do this real quick. Let's do a quick rapid fire session here. Then we'll point people to your book. So, all right, favorite place to unwind for you?
I love unwinding at the gym.
That's a good answer.
I work out, and by moving my body, I separate my mind from work and stress a lot. So if I can get to the gym on most days of the week, I'm a little bit more unwound.
That's great. What is something new you've learned recently?
That I need to make space in the evenings to talk to my kids. I've spent a lot of my life
so good, man.
Thinking about rhythms with little kids and all the things that you do and you say and kind of you're in charge. And I now have an 11 and a 13-year-old, and they're not, true adolescents yet, but I'm starting to realize creating space is actually they're starting to fill the space now. And so I'm learning that I need to give them space in the evening to like talk back and unfold and just like relate, which is really fun.
That's so good. One thing my wife and I have been doing recently is, instead of of course we correct, we always, we're doing our best to stay consistent on that, but we're trying to connect. We're really trying to connect. Yes. Obviously there's time and place for correction for sure, but man, when you correct or when you connect with them before you correct, you meet them on a heart level, and man, things can diffuse quickly. So that's one thing I've been learning. Favorite song right now? That's a tough one.
It's a tough one, but it's a good one for today because I just got introduced to the band Inhaler, which is, as it turns out, and I'm sure they hate being introduced like this, it's Bono's son's rock band. So if you hear it, you're like, oh, whoa, this sounds like Bono. But it's like really good in its own right. And it happened to come to mind because I'm taking my two sons to their concert here in Richmond tonight.
There you go.
Because we've been listening to their album, their newest album, Open Wide, a lot tonight. So really fun band.
Right on, man. That'll be fun. Favorite book of the Bible?
Genesis. I keep coming back to Genesis 1-3 for most of my life and like, oh, this explains everything. Like explains everything about life.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Favorite question for your kids? It's a tough one. I don't even know what I would say to that.
Oh man, that's good. Favorite questions for your kids? Hard to pick one, but I'll just say one that comes to mind. I really like asking them in important moments. I say, if you look at God right now, what face is he making to you? Usually starts a good conversation.
Wow. I really like that. I love that. All right, last one here. Best advice for how to calm an anxious heart and body. And we talked a little bit about this, but anything you'd say there? Anything else you'd add on that?
I'd start with breathe. That's one of the things that we talked about. And then I'd go quickly to just pay attention to your sleep rhythms. Like not just like, are you laying down to honor rest for enough time each night? but maybe are you padding it with a quick prayer before you go to bed and a quick moment of silence and meditation when you wake up, as opposed to what the normal American life is, and that is sleep just shrinks because we're on our phone before we go to bed and on our phone when we wake up, and maybe even, God forbid, in the middle of the night. Protecting and honoring the spirituality of a good night's rest by getting your phone out of the evening and out of the morning is one of the most spiritually and physically healthy things that you'll do, and unsurprisingly lies at the root of so much of our anxiety and depression. So it's low-hanging fruit for anybody who's like, man, I'm stuck, I feel weird, I'm bad. Like, honor sleep. God made you to rest. Just honor it. Give it space.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, man, point them to where they can find the book.
Anywhere you find books. And so anywhere, any bookstore, Amazon is obviously going to be your good friend here. It's all over the place.
Yep.
But if you want to find, a little bit more, you can join my email list at justinwhitmelearley.com, where I send out things like new book announcements or new resources, lots of free resources actually. And if anybody wants to hear little spurts of this stuff, I do post videos on Instagram about body teaching the soul stuff, habits of the household, like rhythms with kids stuff. And so always cautious to recommend people to social media because I try not to be it on myself. I just get on to like post videos and then try to get the heck out of there.
Yeah. I hear you, man.
But
me too.
It's good for some things. So if you ever want to check out like short videos on this stuff, I do post stuff about it on Instagram.
Sweet. Well, Justin, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you for your work, man. It truly is. I'm so excited for this book and excited for people to get it. And listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of No Longer Nomads. We release episodes on Tuesdays at 5 a.m. And make sure to give it a like, a subscribe. If you're watching the video on YouTube, definitely subscribe. If you're doing the audio, make sure to give it a 5-star rating, maybe review. That helps us a ton. And we'll see you next time.